Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen Bloom, Assistant Vice President for Government Relations at the American Council on Education. I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, the Higher Education Clean Energy Projects Map, Lessons from 2021 Onwards. We are so pleased to be partnering with Second Nature on this webinar series, charting opportunities and challenges in higher education's climate action journey. Today is the second in the five-part series. We'll have another session in late January focused on higher education's role in educating the next generation of climate and clean energy workers. And in the spring, we'll hold a session on environmental justice and building strong climate action partnerships, and conclude with a session on the future of the Carnegie Sustainability Elective and higher ed climate leadership. So with that, let me turn it over to Theo Daniels, the Chief Policy Manager at Second Nature.
Thank you for that great introduction, Stephen. As Stephen mentioned, I'm Climate Policy Manager here at Second Nature, an organization focused on accelerating climate action through higher education. And we're thankful that you all are joining us here today. And we're walking through exactly how higher education has built their climate resiliency over the last few years through IRA, BIO funding, and understanding what might be happening next. So we're talking about how plans of clean energy infrastructure on real campuses are making an impact. And so we're going to have a couple of different ways we're showcasing that through a direct case study. The one at Dillard University, Dr. Monique Guillory is going to share some insight there. We also have some insight from some folks that have done some geothermal projects at campuses nationwide. And so we're going to look at some sector-wide patterns, where the tech is growing, where products are clustered, and who might be getting left behind. We'll talk about how federal policy swings, especially changes in the IRA, are going to reshape campus strategies. And then we're going to zoom in on some geothermal. Campuses are installing these systems, quiet, powerful, and all across the country, and understanding how this may work for more institutions that are interested in this moving forward. But to start, we're going to look at our higher education clean energy map. I'm going to hand it off to Bari Samad, our Director of Communications, who can share more as one of the masterminds behind this map, exactly what insights we have here.
Good morning, everyone. Let me just try to reshare. Hi, I'm Bari Samad. I'm the Director of Communications at Second Nature, and I am going to jump right in and share our higher education clean energy projects map and give you a little bit of a context to why this was developed, when it was developed. I realize people may have questions, so we're also going to share the link with you shortly after I do an introductory framing. And if folks have questions, Theo will be sharing an email address where you can email me specifically at MapSat, and we'll field your questions in more detail there. But feel free to drop anything in the chat, and we'll have a recording of the chat as well. So let me jump in. So this map was developed by Second Nature over the past summer to support our subnational policy advocacy work to protect and defend clean energy tax credits in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. Specifically, we looked at direct or elective pay in HR 1, the budget reconciliation bill. So there was a lot of coalitions working together to try to defend those tax credits. The map that you're seeing here on the screen shows about 700 total clean energy projects across U.S. colleges and universities. And really, they show a real cross-section of the volume, scale, and diversity of the sector's leadership in creating impactful climate solutions. A note on our methodology. So what we did was we identified clean energy projects in higher ed that could have qualified for or did actually use the elective pay or direct pay provision under the IRA. And when available, we included IRA data, dollar amount, status of the project. The data sources, I just want to acknowledge those, was original research by Second Nature, and a big shout out to our friends over at the Climate Program Portal, which is a project of Atlas Public Policy, and then, of course, GRIST, who did a major project, mapping project. So we use data from all of those. I just wanted to note that before I jump into the actual demo of the map, that the development and data collection was a rapid policy response. We know that many tax credits were rescinded or will be phased out since the bill was passed. And while this map does not reflect post HR 1 changes. We hope that it can be a tool that serves as a resource for the higher ed community, sustainability professionals in that community, to make the case for continued investments in climate action projects, attracting funding streams, and of course, for these types of projects, build a case in their own institutions, but also importantly for future federal, state, and local level advocacy. So that said, I'm just going to jump right in and tell you a little bit about how the map works. And Theo, if you could share the link um, in the chat for folks, and they can explore it themselves too. So this map again shows 700 projects. There are four views, as you can see across the top. We have all the projects. This includes projects that were across Second Nature Research, the Climate Program portal data, and GRIS data. Decarbonization projects, I'll switch on over here as it loads, are specifically based on the original research we did at Second Nature. The IRA and bipartisan infrastructure law projects are both like filterable just by those types of projects. And this is where you'll find more data on specific dollar amounts and status, of course, keeping in mind my caveat on the status. We also did a view, which is really interesting to be able to see projects by the congressional district party. So you can kind of slide this over and over, and you can see how which projects belong in states with which congressional districts. So let me jump back over to all projects and sort of just run down. So this is all projects. Now we can filter to see projects that are just solar, for instance. So it'll change up. We can do geothermal, which is something we're going to focus on more in this webinar. And again, there are all these categories. You could also filter by a state. So I'll just go with Texas. I don't know why I picked Texas, but I'll do Texas. And then apply that, and it'll tell you about the projects in Texas. Now, I'm going to click on one of these. Now you can see there's a project, and it'll tell you the university name, and this came from this particular category of projects, which is sourced by either GRIST or Climate Program Portal. So this one was Climate Program Portal. So it tells you all about the university, the city, the location, and of course, which party it is. And so if there's another project at University of Texas, which I think there is, you can click these side arrows and it'll tell you all the projects that were in the University of Texas. So I'm going to cancel this. We can also filter out projects by institution size. So I'm going to jump over here and show you that a majority of the projects actually came from larger universities in this particular map, but you can also filter by that. We can also filter by Carnegie classification. So I'm going to click on the one here. Doctoral universities did have a lot of projects in this database, not to say the entirety of higher ed clean energy work. And finally, you can also just quickly look and see only projects that were in the 119th congressional district, either Democrat or Republican. And that is that we created this view mainly for advocacy purposes and folks who are interested in contacting their elected officials about this, about specific projects. So again, it works very similarly, and you have the link, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but I wanted to make sure. Solar was a really big one. So in decarbonization projects, which is projects that we identified with our original research, solar was a big one. So you can see that a lot of projects are solar in that on that side. Again, you can click on any of these maps. You can zoom in. This product was built in ArcGIS. And again, what I wanted to just quickly kind of wrap up the demo, because you have the link to work with yourself. And of course, there's ways to contact us. If you want to add a project and are interested in, please do contact us through the link that Theo shared in the chat. And we'll be happy to work with you and work out the details. So my sense is that, it was a rapid response project. It was a moving target with the bill, but we really wanted to show the scale, diversity, and scope of all the work that higher education is doing and help campuses and in their advocacy effort, but also to continue making the case as we have, unprecedented challenges in the sector in terms of our clean energy work. So I think I think that's about it. I want to pass it over to Theo. And again, please, if you have questions, Theo will share a link at the end right now where you can email us about this product and as a resource or to add or correct even data that you may want to, maybe your university has an update and we'd love to make the update for you on this map. So I think that's what I have. And I'll pass it over to Theo, who's going to talk a little bit about the data that we discovered here.
Thanks so much, Bari. Yeah, now we're going to hop into some trend analysis here. And like Bari was mentioning, the data that we have here, it's pretty powerful, but it isn't perfect, right? And so just wanted to get some final framing and limitations before we talk about exactly what we're seeing on a map of this side with 700 projects that have been aggregated since 2021. Again, it was a moving target, like Bari mentioned, right? A lot happened over the summer with the Inflation Reduction Act as we were sort of beginning to work on the implementation of this MAP project here. I'm sure some of you saw on the news how the reconciliation process went that birthed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was signed into law on the 4th of July this year. And we try to really do a lot around higher education's interest in that and making sure that folks could, have the ability to reach out to their congressmen if they wanted to, their senators, things of that nature. And we saw that, well, it was kind of hard. There were some, issues with disjointed, sort of siloed ways of seeing how certain institutions were reporting what products they may have had, seeing how maybe there was a bit of cohesion that could have been developed there throughout this process as well. And so what we see here is that, right, some of these projects that we have on our map, they might be missing costs, estimates on emission reductions, energy output, things of that nature. But there's still a lot of stories that we can tell. And so I want to get into some of those today with our trends. And the first of that, what you saw on the map there, you can just look visually and see that deployment is pretty widespread here. But it does have a couple of through lines that we found were pretty interesting that we're still unpacking now internally here at Second Nature. R1 institutions, of course, were leading the way. About of the 709 products that we categorized, 310 of those came from R1 institutions, which is about 40% there. Community colleges still had a fair share of weight there too, about 128 projects. And we did see all types of institutions represented. HBCUs were there, tribal colleges were there, MSIs were there, but not in a proportional sense, which I think raised some flags for a lot of us here. And we wanted to unpack sort of, well, what could those barriers be, right? Obviously, we can talk about how small institutions may have tighter budgets, issues around procurement, right? Supply chain logistics, things of that nature. One thing that you'll notice is maybe state politics or state policies might not be aligned with clean energy projects and deployment. I know I've heard that from some institutions that I've talked to. And of course, just having smaller facilities might limit the scope of projects that you can tackle. But we do see overall that the sector can have the legs to push climate policy nationally if we do have a little bit more cohesion here. Products are showing up in red states and blue states, swing districts. They're showing up in rural communities. They're showing up in urban centers. And that diversity is going to give higher education the opportunity to do something incredibly rare around cross-partisan climate credibility, something that we may need moving forward. On the technology front, it was really interesting. Of course, you hear a lot about solar, right? And again, so of the 700 or so projects, 131 of those were solar projects, and that was the broad majority there. A lot of EV infrastructure projects as well. It'd be interesting to see how this may shift moving forward, given the recent elimination of those EV tax credits. Geothermal was one of the growing technologies, something that we're going to be touching on a little bit later. And also HVAC, storage, and batteries. We saw a little bit of those as well, but not to the same extent. But not all the projects were focused on technologies, right? So a lot of grant dollars went to just decarbonization efforts overall. And that just to give a little bit more voice to that could be things around, say, workforce development, curricula, things of that nature. We saw a lot of dollars going towards research. Again, seeing how R1 institutions were leading the charge there, a lot of those projects fell into that umbrella as well. Environmental justice was really a big consideration too through some EPA programs. We'll hear a little bit more about that in a second. And then also some general IRA and BIL considerations as well. Some of the projects that we were able to capture, they didn't have specific, say, press releases or a lot of insight into exactly what the dollars were being used for. So we just kind of had to do our best guesstimate for some of these, but also at the same time, we noticed some really cool umbrella categories that we can put these things under. On the geographies, the Northeast dominated projects, and you see a percentage range because it really kind of depends on how you want to classify each cadre of states here. But they took about a quarter of the projects there, mid-Atlantic region, moving a little bit further down the East Coast. Again, you're seeing some pretty wide adoption of clean energy products in higher education institutions. West Coast as well, of course. I mean, obviously, with the things going on over there, California, Oregon, and Washington being some really climate forward thinking states. Of course, you would see some pretty wide adoption there. Some adoption in the Midwest as well. Colorado staying out as a standalone state, doing some adoption as well. But I think what was really interesting here, and what we hope to do some more analysis on, is the type of projects in these high activity regions, right? So you might see Colorado is a bit lower in terms of percentage, but some of the projects that they're doing there, say, might revolve around some really more stronger, more expensive technology, say hydrogen hubs, things of that nature. Things that you may not be able to adopt in other places, say in the Northeast, where you might see a lot more around solar and geothermal. But of course, if there's high activity regions, there's going to be low activity regions. And as you're looking around the map, you'll probably notice that there might be some areas where you see a lot less dots. The Southeast being one of those, around our Gulf states, the Mountain South, the Great Plains. And so it really becomes an interesting question of, well, where are they at in terms of technology development? Where are they at in terms of this green energy transition, especially in the higher education sector, right? And it becomes a very careful calculus understanding, well, how can we get some of these institutions more on board with what we have now? And so just some key takeaways here from our analysis thus far, and again, it's something that we're still doing to this day, just how higher education can be a scalable deployment engine, right? We see how incentives can work very well for a lot of these institutions. Campuses can respond quickly, especially if there is that federal backing. Coordination definitely is lagging on a little bit. Money and influence can definitely be seen as being left on the table right now with current efforts. But again, who's to say that that can improve in the near future? And one thing that we really want to emphasize is that equity cannot be an afterthought. Again, like I mentioned, HBCUs, MSIs, and tribal colleges, while had some projects that we captured in our database, we definitely think that there is an avenue for them to have an increased representation in the clean energy transition as well. And lastly, with more data transparency, we can improve our leverage. You mentioned this is 700 projects. We're sure that we're just scratching the surface here of what institutions are doing nationwide, and we would love to capture more of those projects for sure. So if we have more numbers, if we can show exactly where these dollars are going and how we're informing that clean energy transition across multiple fronts, whether it's curricula, workforce development, whatever you like to put as the parameters there, we would love to see exactly how we can get more numbers here. And of course, that can inform what might be happening in Washington or what might be happening in states across America. And with that, like I mentioned, the patterns are clear and the sector is moving, adapting in many ways, even in the middle of political turbulence. And turbulence is exactly what we want to touch on next. And so to get a better sense of how these federal policy changes might be impacting institutions on the ground, we're joined by Dr. Monique Guillory, president of Dillard University. Could share more.
Here I come. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Sure can.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much to ACE, and we are just delighted to be a part of this illustrious panel to share our experience. We certainly wish we had better news to share, but I'm hoping that through these types of partnerships and alignments that we can continue the work that we had started. I just want to share a little bit of insights into what Dillard's experience has been in this space. I'm a relatively new president. I was just actually installed as the president of Dillard just last month, but I've been here and working first as the interim president and then fully appointed as the president just about a year ago, even though I was just recently installed. When I came into the space, I joined Dillard initially as the provost and shortly was tapped to be the interim president. And there was already a very active and engaged community of students and faculty, I have to say, who were working in the sustainability space. And if you know Dillard, we are in the Deep South, located in New Orleans, Louisiana. We have a really beautiful, lush, park-like setting of 55 acres with very mature oak trees, an oak-lined alley that leads up to our main student center. And so just being present on the campus, there is this very palpable sense of the beauty of nature, and it is one of the most notable assets of our campus community. And back in 2024, early in 2024, not long after I was asked to step in as the interim president, we were notified that we had received a community change grant, which in the amount of almost $20 million, about $19.8 million. And I know the amount of work that had gone into developing this proposal. I participated in one of the video, presentations that we had prepared to compete for this grant. This was the second substantive grant, the second most substantive award that Dillard had received in its history, and the second large award that we had received in this space. We were also the lead on a clean energy grant with four other local institutions. Much like what Theo had talked about, the grant covered a number of those initiatives, including the installation of electric vehicle charging stations, the complete overhaul of our HVAC system. Dillard is the oldest HBCU in the state of Louisiana, and our infrastructure reflects that. And We had had some substantive repairs made to the campus following Hurricane Katrina, but that was 20 years ago now, and we were finding where a lot of our equipment was failing and needing to be replaced. Our campus runs on a chiller system, and all three of our, I think, 1,200-ton chillers really need to be repaired. One isn't functioning at all. One's kind of limping along, and we really rely on one that had been most substantively kind of refurbished to really furnish and equip the whole campus. And that has led to a number of challenges over the years as we are experiencing hotter and hotter summers. We've actually had to pivot to evening move-ins because it is just too warm for families and students to move into their residence halls during the day in August when the fall semester is starting. So we have to stagger move-in times from like 6 in the evening until 9 and 10 o'clock at night, just because our HVAC systems can't sufficiently cool down our facilities. And that is not the most reassuring environment where you want to bring your student for their college experience. But we've had to pivot in that way just to accommodate our aging HVAC infrastructure. Along with the HVAC changes and improvements and the installation of EV charging stations, we also did have a workforce development initiative with the construction of solar panels and a community solar panel education program. We have a number of local community partners who are looking for information about solar energy and are curious about the possibility of this really being efficient and good for the environment. And we are already kind of a community partner with a number of aging neighbors who come to our campus once a month for lunch and learns. And we were targeting to help them better understand energy usage and energy efficiencies in their homes. So this was a far-reaching initiative that was going to span 3 years. It branched out into three neighboring rural parishes with our partner at United Way, establishing resiliency centers in those areas where individuals could go for resources and commodities in the event of a hurricane, kind of a lighthouse in these communities where these spaces would be generator powered so people could go and charge phones and just have a hub and a center where local power grids would fail during storms. So this grant had very far-reaching impact and results, and we were very excited about the opportunity for Dillard to be leading the way, not just with utilizing clean energy strategies, but certainly being a voice and a mouthpiece to underscore and highlight and educate others about the importance of sustainability initiatives and clean energy efforts. With the new administration, we did recognize that once it was clear that all initiatives aligned with, clean energy and climate change, and certainly Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which was what funded the community change grant. We saw where the grant that we had been awarded was likely to be rescinded. And it took a few months, but eventually we did receive a termination letter from the EPA informing us that our grant had been terminated, and we had only managed to receive about almost $200,000 of the 20 million. We have not given up hope entirely. We are trying to work with our congressman, Congressman Troy Carter, who had been instrumental in helping us to secure that grant. And he actually testified before the EPA with Lee Zeldin, explaining to him that it was not just funding that was to support these types of clean energy initiatives that the administration opposes, but even just with the replacement of our chillers and exhaust fans and fan coils and the improvements to campus infrastructure, it was really setting the institution and the campus facilities back by losing these resources. The Trump administration has been very adamant that it has no intention of, hurting HBCUs. It's in support of HBCUs. But Dillard was the only HBCU that received this funding, and it has been a significant blow to the institution to have this funding rescinded. We've had to find other ways to do the most urgent aspects of implementation from this award, which was the replacement of our chillers. With the aged equipment, like I said, it was not sufficiently cooling spaces. Students were very uncomfortable during the highest points of the summer months, which of course stretch into the fall in New Orleans. But also, we recognize that our aging equipment is exacerbating issues with mold. And we had to find the resources to change out this equipment and to just for health and safety reasons. So we are applying Title III funds to repair a second chiller and fully replace one of them. This was money that was supposed to go towards the library upgrades that we will not be able to do, and we'll have to continue to fundraise for that purpose. And I just want to close out by saying that, in the HBCU space where these institutions have been historically underfunded, it can certainly feel sometimes like a focus on ecology, environmental justice, and sustainability is can feel like a luxury, particularly when we are struggling to maintain our facilities and always continuously do more with less. And securing the community change grant was a real boon to our confidence that we could be a leader in this space and really do some highly impactful work with our community and certainly with other higher education partners. So it isn't just a blow to the work that will not get done. Another initiative that this was going to fund was the expansion of blue bikes into the Gentilly community, which is a predominantly older African American community in the heart of the city. It's about 2 miles towards the lake from downtown, the French Quarter and Canal Street, which is the most touristy part of the city. But Gentilly is a very residential community that is mostly populated by older people. And the Blue Bike Initiative was going to expand into the Gentilly community that is not only inhabited by Dillard University, but there are two other universities that are in Gentilly, the Southern University of New Orleans and the University of New Orleans. And expanding the Blue Bikes into the Gentilly community would give these students and residents access again to these clean energy resources. There was also an initiative to start a recycling program at Dillard. New Orleans does not have a very robust recycling program. You have to basically bring goods and bring your recyclables to certain areas. And the more of those pickup locations that you can create, the more likely people are going to participate and join those initiatives. So we were really looking forward to increasing the awareness of sustainability initiatives with our students, but also into the community. So I have to underscore just the kind of disappointment that we can no longer serve that role. Ironically, the story continues that we were fortunate enough to be the beneficiaries of a $19 million award from Mackenzie Scott. And we are so grateful for that. And while it will not be a dollar for dollar replacement for the funding that we lost from the EPA, we are looking to invest in some of our sustainability initiatives. The students have been asking for a gardening club, and a lot of our neighbors have been interested in our support for urban gardens and urban farming initiatives. And so we will be investing in that. We had already overhauled our greenhouse and will be using that for both campus and community initiatives. And so being fortunate enough to have some of the resources retrieved through another area, we're grateful that we can explore how we can continue to be champions and leaders in this space. We have not entirely given up on the EPA grant. We're working through other partners like UNCF and our congressional delegation. But we'll see how far we can get into the new year to see if there's any hope of recovering any of the EPA funding. But we are continuously looking for additional partners. We want to encourage our students to continue their interest. One of the things I have to figure out as the president, we were looking to start a degree program in sustainability with the resources from the EPA. And barring that funding, I mean, that would at least be seed money for an academic program with new faculty members and a degree program. We would have to identify how we would underwrite new faculty in this area. But we did hire a horticulturalist who we did retain, and that was supposed to be a part of the EPA initiative, but that individual is still on staff along with a faculty member who's a horticulturalist. So we will be exploring how we can potentially build that degree program now with the Mackenzie Scott funding and any additional initiatives that we can launch with our community and higher education partners. And so again, thank you so much for this opportunity. We thank ACE and Second Nature, who has been an ongoing partner with us. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guillory, for those amazing words. I mentioned as an HBCU graduate myself, all too familiar with the patterns of disinvestment and disenfranchisement that definitely need to be talked about more when it comes to the clean energy transition on campuses as well. And it's super inspiring to hear how you all are not just working with students, but the community as well on implementing innovative solutions. And we hope to hear some good news on the grant soon as best we can. And kudos to your congressman for doing his part as well. Thank you, Dr. Guillory. And that puts us at an interesting point. Like Dr. Guillory mentioned, what we're hearing is a really real truth across the country when clean energy tax credits get rolled back or reshaped. Institutions have to adjust fast, whether that means reworking project budgets or delaying construction or reevaluating their entire decarbonization strategy. Federal incentives are a really powerful tool, but they can also be volatile or vulnerable to changes in administration. That puts us at a really interesting point. So we're going to shift over to our next component of our session here and really ask the question, what happens when technologies can give campuses stability, predictability, and deep emission cuts, even when the policy landscape gets messy? And that's what we want to talk about here with geothermal. And if your institution is serious about cutting emissions, about stabilizing long-term energy costs and preparing for an electrified future, then geothermal could be one of the smartest infrastructure decisions that your institution could make. Obviously, heating and cooling are the biggest energy load on almost every campus, and geothermal tackles that in an interesting way. Stable performance in every season, major efficiency gains for decades. You name it, it could be a really good solution for a lot of institutions. It's resilient, it's low maintenance, it can work in tight urban spaces for those that are institutions in cities, and it can work in wide open campuses, and it can replace aging HVAC systems that might be due for retirement. Things like solar are great, but we know that that can be the only solution for decarbonizing a campus. So we want to talk about with the preservation of the geothermal tax credit and the One Big Beautiful bill that goes into the 2030s, how maybe more institutions could take advantage of that. And we have three great examples we want to highlight here at the University of Wisconsin-Eau, Clair, Agnes College, and American University. So I'm going to turn it over to each one of these institutions to share more about their specific project. And then we have a couple of questions that we want to ask them as part of a panel discussion to just sort of see how we have some commonalities between these projects, but also what sets each of these apart. So I'm going to pass it over now to Lily.
Thanks, Theo. Hello, everyone. I'm Lily Strehlow. I'm the Campus Sustainability Coordinator at the University of Wisconsin-Eau, Clair. And I won't spend a lot of time on the details. This is being recorded, and you can find the slides afterwards, I'm sure. But we did a public-private partnership building to replace an old arena, basketball-style arena. And we had very generous alumni donate to this project. The Sonntag Center, the name of the building, is named after the primary donors, but a local foundation, the Pablo Foundation, founded by an alumni, donated about $10 million to, and in exchange, they said, you're required to do sustainability. So we had this really wonderful alignment where we had an alumni and his foundation saying we're here to support this project for this campus if it's sustainable, and we also had several years of student advocacy saying we expect sustainability in our buildings, we expect you to do better, this needs to be a consideration. And so we Theo, you could hop to the next slide, please. Um, we did ground source heat pumps on this building. They're underneath the parking lot. There's about 190 wells. Um, and the building itself, I just want to say, is massive. It's about 200 square feet, but it's almost all one level. So we've got these really large spaces, a 100-yard field house, a 5,000 person event center that need their space conditioned. Um, and that's an image at the bottom of the building. We also have Mayo Clinic. They have a sports medicine and diagnostic center kind of on the front of the building. And so they also benefit from the ground source heat pumps. And you can pop to the next slide, please, Theo. Um, Again, here's some stats on sort of the energy efficiency, coefficient of performance, that kind of thing. We do have an off-site solar array, so the building was designed so that there's no fossil fuel or fossil gas combustion on site, and 2.8 megawatts of solar we subscribe to, and that makes the building net energy neutral, which we're really proud of. One of my favorite things to do is take students on tours of the building and to say, this building right here is how you decarbonize, and we can do it right now, right? And that's a lesson that most students don't get to hear very often. They think it's impossible to stop climate change. And this building turns that narrative on its head. There's a couple really wonderful other things going on. Our environmental public health students, they track water and air quality, and that helps us with our well health safety rating recertification, and it's campus as a living lab. We're planning Eau Claire Earth Fest, which the city of Eau Claire, the county, local nonprofits, it's going to be a huge event. We're very excited to host it in Sonntag. Our facilities staff are much more comfortable with ground source heat pumps. And within the UW, we're a 13 campus system. And this project is not a state project. Like I said, it's public-private partnership, but it helped us catalyze projects on other campuses and in new ways. Because, as soon as one campus gets something, the other campuses say, hey, what if we got that too? It's possible. It's not, failing on them. It's a good investment. And so we're able to put sort of proof of concept forward for the state system. A couple lessons learned. I could get to that in the chat later when we're doing panel questions. And I'll pass it along to Agnes Scott.
Awesome. Thanks, Lily. So I'm Kimberly Reeves. I'm the executive director for the Center for Sustainability at Agnes Scott College. Maybe a little bit of context. We're a very small liberal arts institution for women located in the city of Decatur, which is about 6 miles outside of downtown Atlanta. So in the Piedmont region. And so thinking about our college campus, we have about 1 million square feet of buildings and range from about 40 45 to 55% tree canopy. So definitely a dense campus, but also with lots of green space. And so in thinking about the two geothermal systems that we have on our campus, one is about a little over a decade old, and then the other is about 7 years old. And so neither of these were we able to take advantage of any of the recent tax credits, but I think that also is very telling in terms of being able to move these projects forward and hopefully finding some creative financing to be able to make it happen. I would say in terms of the 2014 Campbell Hall renovation, that building used to be our 1951 Science Center, and it stood for about a decade without anything going on in that building. We really were trying to figure out how to refurbish it, what to do with it. And so it became multi-purpose. So it has residential spaces, it has office spaces, it has classroom spaces, and it also houses a lot of our academic centers. So very well used 24/7. And our friends over at Columbia Theological Seminary in 2007 had installed a geothermal system under their soccer field. So really a great opportunity to point to a neighboring institution that had already done this work within our region and just a mile down the street from us. So um, uh, Rebecca was also another major historic renovation in 2018. And so that one was especially exciting. We've removed a surface parking lot to be able to then replace with green space and the geothermal system underneath that building as well. Before we jump to the next slide, maybe also to note that both the Campbell Hall and then the top two floors of Rebecca had not seen air conditioning until those renovations. So really this was emissions avoidance for us since we were bringing on such large pieces of equipment that would normally be producing more emissions in the traditional sense. I guess go ahead to the next slide, if you will. And so there's a lot of pictures on here, but hopefully you guys can kind of orient yourselves. So in the upper corner, you can see the probably 50 surface parking lot that was then replaced with green space for Rebecca Scott Hall, which has 2 floors of residential, and then the main floor is our welcome center and our admissions office and financial aid. So also another 24/7 building that is consistently used. And then in the bottom corner, you'll see Campbell Hall. We used our science quad. We decided to prioritize green spaces that we knew as part of our campus master plan would stay green spaces. Probably in terms of lessons learned, we used our green revolving fund to fund both of these projects. Both building historic renovations were 100% fundraised through individuals and foundations. And so the green revolving fund for the Campbell installation was the delta of what we knew was going to be the cost of an HVAC system for that space. And then Rebecca, we ended up running the project 100% through the green revolving fund. And I think lessons learned, we just the return on investment from those projects, we would recommend to do the delta of that project and really prioritize fundraising the already known costs of the HVAC system. Also, another lesson learned, the Science Quad is where we host our commencement every year. And so we have had a event tent stake pierce the system twice. And so we have really been putting into place some precautions to flag it, but then also utilize shorter stakes when the system kind of comes up closer to the building. But kind of similar to Lily, I think a lot of campus engagement, but also a lot of community engagement of hosting tours, showing a proof of concept, and really a great opportunity to for these unconditioned spaces to avoid emissions. And we also definitely are interested in continuing to find other locations on campus that we can install other systems. I think that's probably it for my piece, so I'll go ahead and pass it off.
Thank you. I'm Megan Litke from American University. I'm the director of sustainability there. We're located in Washington, D.C., and we are just about to um, cut the ribbon on the building that is responsible for our first geothermal project on campus. So the Allen and Amy Meltzer Center for Athletic Performance is our current construction project. It is pursuing both ILFI Zero Energy and LEED Platinum. And that pursuit is what ultimately led us to pursue geothermal. Um, on campus, we have a standard of LEED Gold for all new construction projects to help support our carbon neutrality status that we earned in 2018. And for this particular project, it's located sort of in the back of our campus, a little bit further away from some of our hubs. So there were a few credits that were trickier to get in under sites and location, just because of its location on our campus, which forced the design team to look more at the energy credits. And that opened the door for geothermal, additional solar, and then looking at expanding from LEED Gold to LEED Platinum. Um, the system finished construction earlier this year, and people are actually moving into the building next week. So it will all officially come online the start of the spring semester. It's a 85 well system. Since we're located in Washington, D.C., we often reference that the Washington Monument is 550 feet tall. And we have found that that really helps to engage people in how big of a project this is, how deep those wells are, since they can kind of get a better visual for how deep they are thinking about the Washington Monument. You can jump to the next slide. So here I have some photos of the construction project underway for the geothermal system and one of the graphics that our architect Perkins Eastman made for us to use to help explain the project. So for this building, the geothermal wells are located both behind it and next to it, including partially under a athletic track and field. And so, just to stress the importance of engagement for the groups that we were able to engage early on when we were still drilling the holes, I think those groups have a much better sense of what this project is than the ones who are now just seeing a track and field and have a harder time understanding exactly what they're looking at and get their brains around it. We've already incorporated this project into our campus sustainability tour. We have several hundred people take that tour each semester. And so it's a really great opportunity to share what we're doing overall and especially talk about how we're continuing to expand our commitment. One of the challenges of having achieved carbon neutrality is keeping that momentum going and making sure that we're continuing to drive down direct emissions and look for opportunities to avoid additional emissions. And so I'm really excited that this project is not only going to be a net zero building, but also a project that really demonstrates our continued commitment to our goals. Overall, because of the building's use, they had to make sure to design systems that were going to exceed what the energy model predicted. As an athletic building, we had really unique space types, including a wrestling room that sometimes needs to have the heat up higher than 80 degrees. And so these spaces kind of threw off what a typical energy model would be looking at, and we needed to make sure that there was enough cushion within the project. So I will wrap it there and let us talk together.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight, you three. Let's see if we can get the four of us spotlit here for our nice little conversation. So in the interest of time, we'll see if we can keep these to be some snap answers, and we'll see if we can knock out a couple birds in one stone with each question. So we can just go around, I guess, in reverse order. We'll start with you, Megan, and work our way back around. We have some really strong project examples here: Nation's Capital, Down South Indicator, and in the Midwest, Eau Clair. I'm just curious how, because this is a huge commitment. How did you guys get those conversations started on campus? Right? How did your campus begin to explore geothermal and for an institution that might be starting from ground zero? What would you recommend for them to be their first step?
Uh, for us, I would say it was really just continuing to ask the question because geothermal wasn't on the table at the start of this building project. And it was really just when we realized that we were a little tight on credits, how are we going to get to gold? And in addition to that, DC is about to have a requirement that all new construction be net zero. So we're also starting to think about that and just looking at this project as what could potentially be our last project that didn't have to be net zero. How could we use this as an opportunity to identify what our challenges were going to be in that? And so I think it's just important to, even if you think the answer is going to be no, or if you're 100% sure the answer is going to be no, ask those questions anyway so that people start to think about it. And even if you don't get it in this particular project, people will start to have it on their minds for the next project.
I think for us, solar really wasn't on the table for either of these buildings, just in terms of feasibility and cost and size of array. And so really we were looking for other opportunities for to support our 2037 carbon neutrality goal. And I guess I would say a couple of things. If you can find a peer institution that's local enough to have a tour, reach out to them to see if you can bring folks over there. I know that we're always willing to have teams come look at our spaces. I mean, green spaces, right? But in terms of really being able to envision it, that's what we did with Columbia Theological Seminary, which was really helpful. And then I think I would also say go ahead and commit to that feasibility study. My last institution was in Colorado, and we found that our campus was built on mine shafts, and so it just really wasn't feasible. And so, really learning that information up front is so helpful because then you're not going down that pathway of advocating for something that once you learn that that's not really a possibility. So we did do a feasibility study here for the Campbell installation in 2014, and that's really what set the conversations into how do we make this happen.
I'll add to that. Um, I wasn't employed by UW-Eau Claire when they began sort of bringing these details forward and really determining that they would be doing ground source heat pumps. Um, Part of that was tied to their goal of achieving LEED Gold certification. Um, and one of the lessons learned that I walked away with, our former campus leadership, our director of our foundation, and our chancellor, I think that they could have learned a little bit more of what exactly the technology was. And so for me and the work I do on campus, um, you know, making sure that folks know this doesn't produce energy, it consumes energy. It's not like the system in Iceland and some of those really basic things, um, I think need to be shared more widely. And I was really happy to see Dr. Guillory here and speaking so like specifically to this technology. That's something that our former chancellor, I don't know if he could necessarily do. Um, and it's something that makes a difference on your campus. I want to echo what Kim said as well about touring other campuses. We've also gone to Carleton College, which is, a couple hours away in Minnesota. And our facilities folks have gone to a healthcare building that's net zero and has ground source heat pumps. And understanding those systems and talking, facilities person to facilities person truly changes the conversation on campus.
It's really interesting. It sounds like, Lily, you mentioned the pursuit of LEED Gold standards. Megan, you mentioned how DC building code might be updating soon, and that played a role. So it sounds like it's not just a sustainability consideration, but also just an operational one as well. Thinking about the future, which Kimberly, I like that you touched on sustainability plans outright, right? Looking to the future. So I'm curious for each one of you, how big of a role is the geothermal project playing in reaching your decarbonization goals, whether it's 2030, 40, 50? What is that looking like?
Happy to go. I think for us, in terms of electrification, our current mix is still over 40% natural gas and generally over 60% non-renewable sources. And so I think that geothermal definitely is a strategy, a key strategy that we're looking into in terms of really being able to say carbon neutrality. And so I think for us being so densely situated within the city of Decatur, it may not be so expansive, and we're not building new buildings. Our last building, our new build was in 2008, so we were really focused on renovating buildings, and so I think it'll always be a retrofit. But interesting to be able to consider both retrofit and new build with this technology.
I can hop in. So we are looking at retrofitting a state building with ground source heat pumps through the state funding process, which is a can of worms here in Wisconsin. So, we have that project in the works. We were able to do a long-range utility plan to understand what buildings have space for wells and what buildings maybe don't, so we can at least know what we're working with on our campus. So the big challenge for us is just navigating that state building funding system. Um, and that includes this project we have really on our near future, as well as any other project that we want to retrofit. Um, and then Theo, I just call out that the LEED Gold and those achievements, they're so specific and tangible and shareable that I think leadership really gravitates towards them, and students gravitate towards them because it's a sort of a microcosm of the overall context of sustainability.
Yeah, and I would say for us, we also have BEPS to contend with, which is the Building Energy Performance Standard in DC. So starting with this new build construction project that included geothermal, we're having conversations about opportunities where we might be able to use this in other parts of our campus that are on a district loop right now to decrease our direct fossil fuel use.
Awesome. Super insight. So what I'm thinking is that there's a lot of area of collaborations. What I'm hearing from each of you, it sounds like there's this idea of, hey, we need to go visit other institutions. We need to do these feasibility studies. And so in the interest of time, we'll cut the panel here. But I believe if you all are open with sharing your emails in the chat, it could be great maybe for folks that may want to reach out to you all. I'm sure we'll also share these slides and other resources. And I know we have a couple of Q&A questions. So if any of you want to feel free to address those as we wrap up here. Thank you so much for your insight and your time and sharing about how geothermal is working for your institution. And if we can bring Stephen back in here, then we can go ahead and wrap up and just share what that recap is, right? How higher education is building clean energy at a scale that most people just don't realize. Sectors positioned uniquely to lead on broad climate coalition, and federal certainty is going to hit hardest where capacity may be thin, but that doesn't mean that all hope is lost. So we'll send out today's slides. We'll include a map link that you all may have already clicked on in the chat there, and resources for the institutions that are exploring the next steps. Stephen, you have more?
Thank you, Theo, for that wrap up, and thanks to Dr. Guillory and our panelists. We really appreciated a rich, interesting conversation today. Before we end the webinar, we wanted to share some resources focused on the relevant changes to the IRA green energy tax credits from the One Big Beautiful Bill, or here in Washington we call OB3. You'll see a link in the chat to a high-level summary of the key changes to the IRA, repeal of certain commercial and transportation credits, accelerated deadlines and restrictions for wind and solar projects, and new foreign entity of concern restrictions. And in addition, we'll put in the chat some links to other resources that you may find helpful to see the changes to the IRA from OB3. Those are from a couple of major law firms. And finally, given the challenges here in Washington for advancing climate advocacy and climate policy making in the spring, ACE and Second Nature is jointly, we plan to release a state sustainability toolkit for campus stakeholders to advocate in their states for tangible ways to expand sustainability efforts through state higher ed partnerships. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you all, the panelists and Dr. Guillory for joining us today, and for Second Nature's great work with that projects map, which is really unbelievable. We hope that you all have a happy holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.